Hello and welcome to my second part from Mittelbau Dora, my tour of the camp. I had to go back to recharge my batteries, well, not my batteries, the telephone's batteries, and so therefore I'm able to continue now. Having said that, the place is actually closed, or rather the museum's closed, but I did ask, I got permission to stay. Well, everybody will get permissions just because it's just not closed, to stay here and to continue. But the advantage of doing this now is not only that there is no one here, or nearly no one here, but also I had a chance to rethink the route I was going to take through the camp and to do it in a more logical manner, to include, to sort of finish at the place I started off from. One thing that stands out to me is how well landscaped everything is here, how clean it, well, when I say clean I mean all camps are clean, but here it's I think with the way the trees look and the presentation is extremely well done. This of course is mainly due to work since the last 30 years, since the reunification of Germany. So let's put the camera to the front and to allow you to see something. It looks totally different to the way when I was here 20 years ago. I was just talking to the gentleman in the museum, and he said to me about the changes, although some of the things, what you saw in the part one is, if you saw part one, that was all visible 20 years ago, but what we're now going to see are things which were then out of bounds, and so I'll take you there in this video. So still people here. I don't want to put other people into the camera shot if I can avoid it. Down here we have a water retention pool. Now these pools, you can find them in every single camp. Indeed, you get the Holocaust denialists claiming that places like this, things like this, just indicate it was some kind of amusement camp or something like that. This is in line with building regulations which existed at the time. Water was kept in them. Okay, so it may have happened that both at Auschwitz and at Nordhausen, for example, the people used them for swimming in. Well, why not? But they were the guards who used them for swimming in, not the inmates. Here it's called a fire pond. So okay, I think my translation's better. Feuerlosigkeit, water retention. Here we have an exhibition, which will be closed now, of escapees. Hey, we'll just give it a quick go. So it's 5 o'clock. It's beyond 5. I bet it's closed. Yeah, it's closed. Eh? But anyway, there's people who escaped from the camp. We have a rebuilt barracks up here. The barracks in any camp, it needs to be pointed out, what happened in the winter of 45, 46, and this happens everywhere, that they're suffering from the war. The total breakdown of normal supply, the problems created by the war. So barracks, which had things like doors, glass, nails even, and of course wood, which would burn. Anything that was usable would be taken, and that was to ensure life for those who were here. And think of also the millions of people who were homeless. They've been forced either by the Nazis or by the Soviet army to leave their homes. And so they were in temporary accommodation, if you like, camps. There were people here in Nordhausen, April 1945, mass bombing raids, the destruction of the town that late in the war, homeless. So they just took things. That's part of the reason for the destruction of barracks. Then we have what the East Germans did, and we'll probably get there to what they did in about half an hour's time, something like that. Sorry, I'm panting a bit, and I think the reason for this panting is I had some blood tests done and my white blood cell count is low. I don't know why. One of the causes is it makes me pant. Is it white or is it red? Sorry, it's a red blood cell. It's the red. It's nothing to do with iron, because my iron level's high. A couple of vitamins I could be deficient in, but it's neither. I've got vitamin 12, B12 is over the top. I think it's B3. So I don't know what the cause of it is. This is the former crematorium. Now, when this camp was set up, initially, the people who died, and there would have been plenty of them, in their awful conditions in those tunnels, living in those tunnels, the bodies were taken to Buchenwald or somewhere else for burial or destruction. But that wasn't very efficient. It's a long way to Buchenwald from here. And then they started to destroy the bodies here, makeshift crematoria, or makeshift pyre. And then this was built in the autumn of 1944. This square, I suspect, is happened in the last 10 years, something like that. So I see we've got 3 plates here. I'm going to start over here with a quote from Nehemiah, capital 3, verse 37. Do not cover up their iniquity, or let their sin be blotted out before you. Actually, that's very clear what that means. So, in commemoration of the Sinti and Roma who fell victim to genocide between 1933 and 1945. And as I come over here, we've got a list of the countries, the nationalities. But 1 or 2 of them are really, really unexpected. Albanian, Algerian, Belgian, Bosnian, British, Bulgarian, Danish, German, Estonian, Finnish, French, Greek, Indian, Iranian, Italian, Jewish, Yugoslavian, Croatian, Latvian, Liechtenstein, Lithuanian, Luxembourg, Moroccan, Mexican victims here. Montenegrin, Netherlands, Norway, Austria, Poland, Portuguese, another one, not neutral country, Gypsies, Roma, Romania, Russia, Sweden, Switzerland. Having said that, I've already done videos on people from Switzerland in the SS. Serbia, Sinti, Slovakia, Slovenia, Spain. There were lots of Spanish Republicans who ended up in the concentration camps, above all Mauthausen. It's noted because when the Americans liberated it, there was a sign up in Spanish, Staatenlose, stateless people. Czechia, Turkey, Tunisia, Ukraine, Hungary, United States and Belarus. This building has been reconstructed. The square down there, as I said, it has been as well, I think. Well, sorry, I'm certain, not I think. And here we've got some information, so I'll read this to you. And, right. The crematorium was where the dead from Mittelbau Dora concentration camp were burned. At first, the SS transported the corpses to Buchenwald by lorry. In early 1944, they began operating provisional crematorium in the inmates' camp. From the autumn of 1944 onwards, the corpses were cremated here in the newly erected crematorium. Corpses from the subcamps of Mittelbau concentration camp were also cremated here. The SS had the ashes of the dead dumped at the back of the building. 20,000 people did not survive imprisonment in the Mittelbau Dora concentration camp. At least 5,000 dead were cremated in this building. Here we have Stefan Hessel. If memory serves me correctly, I think Stefan was working in British SOE and he was captured. I might be wrong, but anyway, he was working here. Since our crematorium was working over capacity, bonfires were set up so that the corpses could be piled on top of them in layers. We spent the day pulling at clothing that was smeared with blood and excrement and touching cold flesh. It was pure and utter horror. Now, we know that the ashes were thrown out the back here, and some landscaped way of doing it, somewhat similar to the way the memorial was built at Belget's ash grave. The marked area shows the location of our mass grave. The SS had the ashes from the crematorium dumped here. The grave was landscaped in 2013. Now we shall walk into the forest. I'll give you, there's a look at the ash. How much ash is from one person? It depends on the way people are, how the body's burnt. It could be next to nothing, it could be quite a lot. Just like anything else, it's difficult to say. Now, this is something that's often come up again with the Holocaust denialists trying to the assumptions of huge amounts of ash and things like that. It just depends from the way the body's burnt. And anybody who's ever had a bonfire would know that, you throw stuff on the bonfire, some things burn and others don't. And I do appreciate that parts of the human body are combustible and others aren't, but that's the way it is. There's another thing actually at Auschwitz, the bones. There was a building next to the crematorium too, which has been on books showing it to be a coal store, and this actually came up in the trial of David Irving against Penguin Books in 2000. And this is incorrect. It's not. This small building was not a coal store. It was a place where the bones were smashed up. So there were some people in there smashing up bones with hammers, and they're filled up with sacks. The sacks were then dumped somewhere, whilst bits of bone fragments were falling out of the sacks. We actually know that happened, and because within Jewish religions to try and recuperate the bones as much as possible, but then a decision had to be made how much of this should actually be recuperated and how much of it shouldn't. you can see here how the forest has reclaimed the land, and I mean, this, in my opinion, is quite a magnificent forest. Although it's not as mixed as I like them. I really appreciate a mixed forest. Let's talk a little bit about the camp itself. It's really not until the autumn, early winter of 1944, where the 44-45 that is, where the camp actually managed to reach its maximum production capacity, which never actually met what was planned. But by then, it was clearly too late. The missiles that were fired had little effect. The only missiles I can say which had a target which made any sense were those that were fired at Antwerp. But because they were used the way they were used, they killed, I think it was about 5,600 people in Antwerp. Not an insignificant amount of people, but they had no effect on the war. I'm going to come back to that once I've read this. Here's the inmates' infirmary, and we can see a picture of it being built here. Note the supplies of wood which are around. So it's for build the barracks. Okay, I'll read this to you. The SS isolated sick and dying inmates in the inmates' infirmary. Malnutrition, infections, violence and exhaustion from forced labour quickly led to serious diseases amongst the prisoners. At the end of 1944, the inmates' infirmary consisted of 10 barracks and the crematorium. There was no effective medical care. Inmates who were no longer able to work were transferred to dying barracks on the orders of SS doctors. Frequent causes of death were typhus, tuberculosis, pneumonia and pleurisy. Here's a picture of Leon Halkin, also I think from France. These aren't people being treated here. Their identification numbers, no medical care, no food, no drink. The sick arrive in a room naked and without being allowed to choose, get placed in a bed naked beside another person who's already groaning and suffering. And that was here, and you can see that the forest has completely reclaimed. Now, if we look at a map of the camp itself, we'll see that the infirmary area, the sick area, was a very large part of the camp, and it follows a rather odd border. When I do a documentary type film on this, I'll be able to show that a bit better, unless we pass a map en route, and then I'll show it to you in more detail. Now I want to return to this about the missiles. If the missiles had been used in a tactical manner, and I know I said in part 1 that the only time it was used in a tactical manner was against the bridge at Remagen, which was captured on the 7th of March 1945. Instead of aiming them at London, which only had vengeance, which I suppose that's all about, wasn't it? Vengeance weapon. We'll read this. Disinfection. The SS ordered disinfection measures so as not to endanger the armament production. The catastrophic hygienic conditions led to a plague of vermin and the constant danger of epidemics. The SS had a bath and disinfection barrack erected alongside the furnace building. Clothing was treated with hot steam. The inmates had to shower, after which all their body hair was shaven off and they were immersed in a cold disinfectant solution. They then had to wait outside in the open air, often for hours on end, before being handed back their clothes, which were still damp. This procedure was life-threatening, especially in the winter time. Here we have Aimé Bonifat. In 1960. Lice. Day and night, it's like a fire that devours you. You scratch yourself, your skin gets inflamed, it's hopeless. They're sucking the last remaining drop of life out of us. So there was a special heating house, if you like. So it was a place where things were heated up to boil clothing and other things, which is down here, more or less straight in front, I think. More or less this position. And I think, no, I don't think we'll get round to that one. But the barracks were down here where we are this right now. In fact, I think they're just about visible through there. Anyway, they are there. Anyway, we'll get to that. So to return to the point here, so the Antwerp was not being used as a port. The reason it couldn't be used as a port is because there were elements of the German 15th Army on the outlying islands, which led into the Scheldt estuary. So the northern part of the Scheldt estuary was still held by elements of the German 15th Army, which incidentally is to a large extent why Arnhem failed. The Battle of Arnhem was because the Allies failed. North of Antwerp is a place called Bergen op Zoom, written op Zoom, and that was not captured. If that had been captured in September 1944, it would have cut off the German 15th Army, which then wouldn't have been coming back in drips and drabs to then cut off the road leading to Arnhem. Anyway, come off the point, as I often do when I'm doing things like this. But if I'd done a documentary style video, then none of this would have been possible. I'm going to have to come back to this. I'm going to have to explain what got here. This was the cinema, was up here. Yeah, I'll read to you what it says here. So in the final months of the camp's operation, the cinema barrack served as a provisional accommodation for inmate transports from Auschwitz and Gross-Rosen concentration camps. The building was only used as a cinema for a few months. Privileged inmates who possessed concentration camp money were able to watch entertainment and propaganda films there. At the beginning of 1945, the gradual advance of the Red Army prompted the SS to transfer 16,000 inmates from the concentration camps in the eastern Mittelbau concentration camp. Several hundred survivors of these evacuation transports were housed by the SS in the cinema barrack, which, like the rest of the camp, was appallingly overcrowded. Many people died here after only a few days. So that's here. There's Lubomir Hanak, whom I think is from Czechoslovakia. He said, I was sent by SS Unterscharführer Riga to register the inmates in the cinema barrack. What I saw when I got there was simply defies description. Hundreds of poor devils were lying on the floor. The living beside the dead or half dead. So the evacuation of these camps, such as Auschwitz, such as Gross-Rosen, and they were brought here to this cinema block. Now, I would imagine in the cinema block, they may have shown things such as the Wochenschau, the weekly news, which is something I often use in my documentary videos to show what was going on. And I think itself actually is really interesting for analysis purposes of the war. And they might have shown our films as well. Some of Goebbels' idea of the films was that it had to be entertaining and not boring. Goebbels said the rule is not to be boring, and so his idea with films such as Kohlberg, which came out in March 1945, the idea was to build up people's hopes and they realized something's possible. But he tried to give people not propaganda, which he's often accused of doing, but really Hollywood style entertainment, light entertainment. That's what Goebbels thought was necessary. According to Goebbels, and I absolutely believe in this one myself, is that propaganda is such as that when you're trying to make, well, he didn't use this word, but I'm going to say it, if people are being brainwashed, they can't know that they're being brainwashed. So it's that, like that. That's the way they can receive propaganda. Okay, here is block 134, Once more, I shall read this to you. The inmates' camp was expanded in various building stages in 1944-45. Its construction never reached completion. Unlike the 2-digit block numbers, this block number points to a construction stage carried out in the final phase of the camp. At least 200 inmates were accommodated here between January and March 1945. Among them were Jewish prisoners from Częstochowa in Poland. I won't have to point this actually at it maybe. Between December 1944 and January 45, shortly before the arrival of Red Army, the SS dissolved the Częstochowa ghetto and the forced labour camp, the Hugo and Alfred Schneider AG Hassag Company, located there. Approximately 1,000 inmates were sent to the Mittelbau concentration camp by way of Buchenwald on mass transports. Now this, I dispute actually. I do appreciate that they know quite a lot, but the SS, I can't accept the idea that the SS dissolved the Częstochowa ghetto in at the end of 1944. Completely disagree with that. Anyway, that point, we'll do that in a different video. Right, excerpt from the 6-page transport list of the inmates from Częstochowa to be transported from the Buchenwald to the Mittelbau concentration camp, 23rd of January 1945. So it's actually, as lists go, it's rather, doesn't give a lot of information. So you've got the camp number there, transport KL Mittelbau, 23rd January 1945, and so that is the prisoner registration KL Buchenwald. Okay. This is at the very back of the camp. Now, if I'd done this in a chronological order, I'd have started off at the first barracks to be built. But as you will see, by the time I get to the end, there is a bit of logic in coming around this way. Now, the forest was here before the camp was, and the forest has taken it back after the camp has gone. See the same thing. I was at Treblinka a couple of months ago, and see there how the forest has come back to take what was taken from it. When this place was chosen, it was chosen, I think, for its central location, located near a railway line, handy for bringing in fuel, because it was meant to be a fuel depot for the Wehrmacht. And these were the last barracks to be built. And now we're going to see the barracks that were built earlier, although I appreciate that this probably wouldn't be the way that one would visit. Probably one would have gone round the other way. Anyway, let's come down here and see the other barracks where they were. Right, I was talking about Antwerp, and the short about these vengeance weapons is that if they'd been aimed at the ports, such where Portsmouth, Southampton, this time where the Allies were actually bringing in supplies into France, I appreciate that they mightn't have been accurate enough to hit the landing beaches or things like that, but that would have made far more sense. That's logical. But just to throw them at London, hoping they're going to hit something, and that's going to get the British people, or in the case of the people in Antwerp, to want to stop the war, it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. There was one V2 that hit a cinema in Antwerp, which had an appallingly large loss of life. Anyway, that's something I think I ought to look at in a different type of video. You see here we've got this Rundweg, the circular tour, and the Crematorium, which we've seen. And here we've got a building which is in very good condition. And we've also got a path made for electrical supply in East German times. This is the Effektenkammer. That was where people's stuff was taken. Anyway, I'll read it to you. The depot was where the civilian clothing and private belongings of the inmates were stored. Upon arrival of the transport of the concentration camp, the inmates had to turn in their civilian clothing and personal possessions such as watches, overcoats or wallets onto the depot. The prisoners were then given striped suits that afforded them hardly any protection against wind and weather. The names were replaced by numbers which they had to wear on their jackets. Until the autumn of 1944, the inmates' effects were stored at the main camp at Buchenwald. After Mittelbau became a concentration camp in its own right, they were brought here. Some of the wooden barracks had basement floors. Remains of these cellars still exist. So, of the Effektenkammer. Nice translation using the word, these effects. So that was there. Huge stores of clothes. Mind you, people usually arrived in the camps with hardly anything. They had the clothes, but it wasn't like in many cases they didn't. They were arrested in many cases. It wasn't like with the Jewish deportations, they thought they were going somewhere else, so they took their suitcases and what have you. But if people actually arrested for whatever, they clearly didn't have things with them. You can see the white stones mark the barracks, and this is how in East Germany the electricity was transmitted. You don't see that in the western part of Germany. So this electricity line, the pylons are more than 35 years old. Let me see, going up there as well. So you can see quite large areas here, part of the camp. So that's the laundry building, which is quite large. And I think this was the boiler house. Furnace building it's called here, yeah, with the boiler house, right, for the operation of the disinfection and laundry facility. So when I was walking over there, and I mentioned I can see it down there, and I think I was looking at this. I might have been looking at something else, but I think I was looking at this. So this is the place where they provided the heat for the operation. Now, so you can see the barracks laid out with this white stone, which I think is comparatively recently. Now you may think, it's on a slope. It's not. That's not much good, is it? But the thing, well, had to go somewhere. That's a good sound. It had to go. The barracks had to be somewhere. The caves were already built down there. Prisoners had to live somewhere, so there wasn't really flat ground to do it. But if you ever see Flossenburg. At Flossenburg, it really is on a hill. Today at Flossenburg, one can't see a great deal because there's a housing estate. And the housing estate was built because of the refugees that came largely from the Sudetenland in the immediate post-war period. And once more, they had to destroy the part of the camp because people have to live somewhere. Block 12. Members of Labour Detachment 174, an inmate detachment for the production of A4 rocket tails, had their accommodation in Block 4. Several inmate detachments were employed in the production of the A4 rocket tail. They assembled it from prefabricated parts. The various Labour detachments of the Mittelbau Tail Assembly Department had their accommodation in Block 12 and the neighbouring barracks. In early 1945, Block 12 provided living quarters for 322 inmates, primarily from the former Soviet Union and Poland. So here we have a picture, which I've never seen before. Okay, where's it from? D-Day Museum, Portsmouth. A4 rocket tails in tunnel chamber 37, photo by an anonymous British military photographer, May 45. Okay, this is a funny thing here. Actually, I know what this is, but it's for keeping ash in it. It looks like a pigsty or something. It's a bit odd. I think what I suspect, I don't know, but I suspect this because we've got the furnace bit here, and so I think that what they did was they just dumped their ash in there, and every so often I've got to clear it out. Block 10. In the spring of 1945, Block 10 served as a lodging for 348 inmates employed in rocket assembly. Because they had no change of clothing and their straw mattresses were filthy, lice and disease were rampant, in mid-December 1944, the SS camp physician ascertained the lice infestation of Block 10. Regular delousing measures in the barracks hardly improved conditions. All right, so we have here a report by concentration camp survivor Theo Fischer, said in 1965-66. There was no getting around it. When we had our weekly bath, the medical orderlies detected lice. They had unpleasant consequences because now the entire dormitory had to be cleared of blankets. The night shift, who slept during the day, had to go without blankets for a day and sleep in their clothes. And here we have this record of a louse inspection of the accommodation barracks, 18th December 1944. Block 10 was infested with clothes. It was infested with clothes lice, head lice, crab lice, nits, and scabies. I always thought a nit was all of them, but anyway. So there you go. It says verloust. I mean, this is something which is horrendous to think that they actually treated these workers in such a way. It's illogical, even, that they didn't actually provide better accommodation, better food. Having people in winter in hanging around outside, waiting for the clothes to be washed, and then having to put them on damp. I mean, what's going to happen? It's logical. I do appreciate that people are a bit harder than they are today, but Block 9, I shall read it. October 1943, inmates of the carpentry detachment set to work constructing accommodation barracks, first for the SS guards and later for the camp inmates. Beginning in the spring of 1944, the inmates moved from the tunnels to the barracks in stages. The carpentry detachment occupied Block 9, which was one of the first to be provisionally completed. Initially, there were neither sanitary installations nor any form of bed, although I suppose it's better than sleeping in a tunnel. Here is on the memorial, concentration camp, Josef Tikal said, our work, the construction of barracks, was carried out at a speed like on an assembly line. We ourselves had an interest in this work. The following Sunday morning, we left the tunnel, each of us carrying his straw sack on his back, and moved into Block 9. So, first one to be completed, this one here. We have here we are. There's a picture. Inmates at work constructing a barrack, photographed presumably by Wenzel Pollack, 1943-44. Check-in mate probably took the picture without permission from a window in Block 39. Where did he get the camera from? That's very similar actually to the one we saw earlier. You can see the materials all around here. Presumably he was the camp photographer. Block 13. From 1944 to the spring of 45, so-called inmate functionaries were lodged here. Appointed by the camp administration, they were assigned duties in the management and maintenance of order and control in the camp. The block accommodated some 150 inmates, substantially fewer than other barracks. Anton Hopper, 18th of February 1963, said, in June 1944, I was put in Block 13, the so-called Prominenten block, barrack for inmate functionaries. I was assigned to it because I was a foreman in the Dora camp. This block was strictly reserved for foremen, capos, clerks, and block seniors. So this is the block you wanted to get yourself into if you were a prisoner. We have this picture here, a photograph by Gerard Raphael Algoy, 1945, so after liberation. View of the former inmates' camp from the south. Barrack 13 is seen in the centre. There we go. So. This is block 8. The number of occupants in this wooden barrack varied. In the first quarter of 1945, it accommodated 314 inmates. They came from Belgium, France, the former Soviet Union, and Poland. The inmates had to work in various labour detachments, amongst others the so-called Savatsky Commando. As the director of the Mittelwerk GmbH planning department, Albin Savatsky was responsible for the deployment of inmates in the production of A4 rockets. All inmates in the Savatsky Commando were assigned to rocket assembly. The majority of them were electricians, welders, fitters and mechanics. On the 10th of November 1944, the SS transferred inmates they considered qualified from the Buchenwald to the Mittelbau concentration camp, where some of them were lodged in Block 8. Here we have a picture. It's a drawing by Carlos Slammer, 1945. After liberation, inmates assembling an A4 rocket in the underground factory under the supervision of German foremen. The final inspection was carried out in chamber 41 in the tunnels. Carlo, I presume, well, from his first name, I'm presuming he's Italian, or Slammer isn't actually a Italian name. So Italians brought here because following the surrender, many Italian POWs were put into working in the German armaments industry. Block 14. One half of the barracks served as an inmate's quarters, the other as a sock darning workshop. Between January and March 45, 163 inmates were lodged here. They were assigned to various labour detachments such as the camp kitchen, the camp administration and the sock darning workshop. In the block we were assigned to, there was a dormitory and eating area on one side and sock darning workshop on the other. Even if the rations were abysmal, the work in the warm block did not exhaust us as much as the poor guys who worked in the production of the V1 and V2 or breaking rock to erect new underground factory halls. The circumstances in the camp, quite bearable at first, worsened from day to day. That is from the memoir of Józef Schlank, must be Poland, with a name like that. And we have here the block book of the camp senior Roman Drunk with information number of occupants in each block. The block seniors in the labour department in the Dora camp. Barrack 14 is listed at the bottom right. Block 14, number of inmates 163. So, accommodation barrack. The accommodation barracks were made of wood. The SS housed as many as 500 inmates in each of them. At first, the inmates were housed inside the tunnel complex. Later, the SS transferred them to makeshift prefabricated barracks. Each barrack consists of 2 wings, each with comprising 2 adjacent rooms. I'm going to show. Yes, you can see this here. There's 2 adjacent rooms. There's one room, and there's the other. The first was furnished to serve as a dining room, while the second contained several multi-level wooden bunks. At the centre of the barrack were latrines and washing facilities that were frequently unusable. The hygiene conditions were appalling. The inmates' camp encompassed a total of 56 accommodation barracks, which were dismantled after the war, and today only traces of the foundations remain. So we have an example here from this is from Buchenwald. And now these were standard barracks for horses. That's what they were. And the foundations could be made of stone, and as were, for example, the bits which had the heating unit. That's what you get them in Birkenau. You see that. Here is Władysław Sławski. Or Slavsky, Sławski probably. In my barrack there were inmates from several hundred countries. When I say that there were around 400 to 500 inmates in there, I'm not exaggerating. We were 2 to 3 men to a bunk at first, but later 4 to 5, and we had to take turns. There was a day shift and a night shift. Actually, I shouldn't be doing this. I shouldn't really be walking on stone, so I'm giving a bad example that anybody else might do it. These things have been known to give way. Having said that, in this place I'd expect them not to, But I have been done things afterwards. I wondered why I did it, like going underground. This is a water retention tank. Now bear in mind these barracks are wooden, so this was put here for the purpose of putting out fires. This is a very common feature, as I said a little bit earlier. There's another look at the pylon, and we can come over here and walk down. So I've been talking now for about 45 minutes, and I didn't talk about what I wanted to say, which was about the end of the camp. But I can see there's lots happening, so I'm not really going to have to start. Look, I'll have to do a separate video on that, I think, and because otherwise I'm not going to be able to show you. Look, no one around, isn't it? But isn't it nice? This is Thuringia, and I don't want to say it's the most attractive land, what's that, state inside Germany. Or maybe it is. Or maybe Bavaria is. Oh no, I'm a bit stuck, I don't know. Right, here we've got these ash things. Oh, there you go. So you've got a container for ashes from heating stoves. And here we get a view over the central part. So this is the camp kitchen on the left, and the camp kitchen was where the totally inadequate meals for the inmates were prepared. Malnutrition was the most frequent cause of death. Local businesses supplied the camp kitchen with products of inferior quality. The daily rations fluctuated but were never sufficient. Hunger was a permanent feature of daily life for the inmates. Only very few of them were able to obtain extra food in exchange for concentration camp money. Aside from the camp kitchen, there was also further outbuildings. The barracks housing the inmates were located in the forested area nearby, over there, which we've just seen. Marcel Arbes, sounds Spanish to me. He said the worst thing was the hunger. We were almost always hungry. The tiny ration we got only whet our appetites but couldn't quell our hunger, and that was an inconceivable torment for us. Our faces changed, they got wrinkled and looked older. We began to stoop, and walking became increasingly difficult. And here we have a picture of the camp kitchen in 1946, and you see how a year after the war, and the barracks are all there, and look, indeed you can more or less make out the where you can see the lay of the land today from this picture. Now, again, the food situation, to me, once more, it seems logical. If you want these things, if they wanted these things to be built properly, the company that was actually doing it, the logical thing to do, which is of course made up from Nazi Party members, but the logical is to feed the prisoners properly, to make sure they're fit and able to do their work properly. Now, a lot of what we see here is from East German times. So they did this up. They had parades here. I spoke to a lady from Nordhausen, and she told me that she had been here several times during East German times to take part in various cemeteries. But there's also ceremonies. That's the word. There's also something curious though. Our conversation started when she asked me where the tunnels were. And so the tunnels, which were not opened until 1995 in East Germany, the Soviets blew them up, and then they stayed closed. Okay. Lagergefängnis, camp prison. So, but first we come to a carpentry workshop at the top, and here on the left there was a playing field. Let's see what the sign says about the playing field, and then I'll talk a bit more about it. We even got a picture up here. That's what it looked like. The sports field, the wall of the camp prison can be seen behind the sports field. To the right of the prison is the lumber shed of the camp woodworking shop. So we've got the wall of the prison, got the wall over there. The wall's not the same. Let's just point this one out. It's got these things sticking up on it, and it's got bits coming out, and it's made of brick. But anyway, I'll say at the moment. In the summer of 1944, the SS had a football field laid out next to the camp prison. Only privileged inmate functionaries had access to it. The sports field was located within the grounds of the inmates' camp, between the muster ground, or the parade ground, the electric fence, and the camp prison. The wall of the camp prison formed its boundary to the south. The field was rarely used. Inmates holding administrative functions or belonged to privileged labour detachments carried out football tournaments there on work-free Sundays. No other inmates were permitted to enter it. In 2012, the surviving foundation walls of the camp prison and the walls surrounding the prison courtyard were marked with a tamped concrete crown. The former sports field was moreover cleared of trees and exposed to view. What does that mean? A tamped concrete crown. Is that in German? Stamp beton. There you go. Stamp. Anyway, sorry, we'll leave that one. I'm a bit lost what that means. Okay, Charles Sadron said they're even building a sports ground where one-day football games are to be contested, not between teams of people of our status who barely have enough strength to keep themselves on their feet, but between well-nourished teams. The kitchen detachment versus the medical orderly detachment. And that makes sense. At the Belzec death camp, football matches were organised on the football pitch at Belzec, which is still there today, between the some of the Jewish staff and the SS. They were playing football together, and apparently whoever won, there was never any problems. Not only that, they even invited them, the players, for beer and sandwiches. This is the only example of such a thing that I've actually known. I don't know who was playing here, if it was the prisoners or if it was just the prisoners, or it was used by the SS as well. But I mean, sometimes you see things like this being done, like the Theresienstadt film, where there's two football matches played for the benefit of the Red Cross, and then the film that was made about it, Furious, the Jews' city. But it's all a bit illogical, but I think it's consistent with a Nazi mindset. There's also something that often they'd want boxing matches between prisoners, but they choose the weakest to do it, and this is part of sadism. But football, there's not much sadism involved in football, at least that's the way it seems to me. This is the carpentry workshop up here, and so reconstruction of a carpentry workshop barracks. The same stable barracks as you'll see everywhere. Now here we have the camp prison. Now I was somewhat small. If you see my film on Ravensbrück or Sachsenhausen, it's a bit smaller than that. Here we have a wall. I'm going to put it to you that wall was the original wall. This one isn't original. It's been put up again. It doesn't even look like the original, to be quite honest. Sorry, I see birds sometimes, and I start looking at them when I'm filming things. So here there were 32 cells. The prison itself was administered by the Gestapo, so people could find their way in here. I think they were just camp prisoners. In some places, like Auschwitz or many other camps, you could find prisoners could be brought from outside and held at the camp. I doubt that happened here. I think that this was for those prisoners who had misbehaved themselves according to the Nazis in some way. You can see the cell size, though, was really, really small. Now, the barracks here, this barracks was destroyed by the East Germans in 1952. Why did they do that? I haven't got a clue. I think this was an office, and I'm going to put it to you that the door was here, although I don't know. Oh, there's a sign here. We'll see what the sign has to say for itself. Camp prison. Oh, there you go. There's even a picture of spring of 1945, presumably after liberation. So we've got the building here, and over there we have got, there's a wall which is not the same, but it was made of brick before. Maybe that's the one behind it, and beyond that there was the carpentry shop. There was also somewhere in this area a barrack for the recycling barrack, if you like, the stuff that they'd thrown away but they thought they could use. Anyway, let's come back to the camp prison here. I'll read this to you. The camp prison, known as the bunker, was the central place of incarceration in the camp. Many inmates were murdered here. The bunker was a single-story brick building with 32 cramped cells. It was enclosed on two sides by a high wall. The overcrowded cells were used to house inmates accused of crimes such as resistance or sabotage. The prison was run by Gestapo officers who tortured and murdered its occupants. Despite protests from former inmates, local authorities had the building razed to the ground in 1952. Jean-Michel said, "We sometimes spent the night standing up or sitting down, and sometimes huddled up on the concrete floor. In the morning, the bucket was full of urine and excrement. We were close to suffocating." And this, I think, was a common problem in many of the camps. You see how smaller, and several people in a cell of that size. You know, something you wonder how they managed even to lie down on the bare concrete floor. Here we have a place of execution. Now, normally Nazis would do things, they wanted to instill fear in the inmates, so they did this publicly. Here it was done more or less secretly. Maybe because from the prison here to come to this part here, it was convenient for them. Let's have a look at the sign, and then we'll have a bit more chat. The execution site was a place for secret shootings and hangings. The execution site was located in a small depression in the ground inside the prison courtyard adjacent to the camp fence. I presume the camp fence, I think, was roughly where the between the neatly cut grasses and the not so neatly over there, I think. Being surrounded by a wall more than 2 meters high, the site was not visible from the camp. A gallows with two nooses stood here. Inmates were murdered here for resistance against the SS. The total number of those killed on the site is not known. Right, and here we see what it looked like. So you've got walls with these bits at the top, and it's made of brick. Here, I suspect that this was part of the gallows there. I suspect. And we also noted that it's got uneven flooring, or the what do you call it? Slabs on the floor, and sort of a gravel entrance to it. It's right. So it looks different today. it's been incorrectly done up, but we do see brickwork beneath the concrete, which I don't know if it's cladding or what. I don't know if this is original. And that is more than 2 meters high. But why would they kill people in secret? In some ways it doesn't. They're nacked naval prisoners, yes, in a way one can understand it. But for here, I can't see the logic. Maybe it was just that they didn't want to put the other prisoners off from working. I don't know. Pulling prisoners out and then killing them. There's a place here in this camp where Italian, which I missed in this tour, but Italian prisoners were murdered, and it's near the crematorium. Okay, here we have the this is a new museum, and it's really good. I didn't film inside or anything, but it's got a really good explanation, and I think it makes things very clear for those that may not know much about it. You think of now how wonderfully attractive it is, but for this period between the end of August to the middle of 43 to the middle of April 45, scenes of hell, really, when in a way. So you can see the wall. Right, so I've now reached the 1 hour point of this video, and so if I had done it all in one part, it would be getting on for 2 hours by the time I finished it. So it's probably just as well that my camera gave up a little bit earlier. There you have a view of the camp with the barracks up there. Oh, what I wanted to say about the infirmary barrack, so it's got this very unusual. So the infirmary section almost came to where the tree line is over there. So the normal barracks being over there, and these buildings down here, which were functional to the operation of the camp. But the very large section was infirmary. Now I'll take you into the building where the SS kept an eye on things from. They had this shelter here, and which I presume had a roof on at the time, and this sheltered them from the rain, and downstairs would have sheltered them from the bombs if they ever feared them. So from here they got a pretty good idea what's going on over there in the camp, and they would have seen the prisoners being marched out to work and to the cave, I think that's the right word for it, down in this direction. You see over there as well, we've got more these ash pits. The garages, I don't know if they're original or not. I can see there's a sign up. See something. Have a look at the sign which shows what went on where. Now this building here was once said to be Camp Prison, but we know that Camp Prison was up there. But I'll show you the sign inside, which I think I showed in part 1 anyway. Because actually, I also believe that this was the prison based on maps, things I'd seen planned. There you go. Stehbunker. The politische Abteilung der Gestapo. So this was like the Dunkelarrest, dark arrest. Keeping people in the dark, but it was a shelter. And sorry, it says here shelter anyway. There you go. Oh, sorry, in the early years, the memory of the shelter was erroneously referred to as a prison. Anyway, good. Let's go and have a look. Oh, here we have this. This is an example of a narrow gauge railway train. And we can see there where the coal was put. I wonder how old it is. KZ Lager Dora Mittelbau. Oh, there's the security. So going around checking up on people. So that's probably, I hope it doesn't interrupt me whilst I'm filming. KZ Mittelbau Dora. Okay, here we have a map of the camp. Right, so what I want to show you is this. So we've got, effectively it's this. We've got this huge railway area here. We've got the tunnel, or tunnels, but this is the one, 33, 34 was dug in 95. And hang on, I'll just check to make sure I'm saying that correctly. To the new tunnel entrance, yes. And SS lived around here. This is the SS bit. So as he's getting other camps, such as Ravensbrück or Sachsenhausen, you're walking through the SS bit. And here is where the prisoners were kept. So you have all these barracks and buildings which were for the SS. And this bit here, this camp here, this is the sick quarters, which is quite odd in my opinion, the way it looks. Anyway, so I'll read some of the other things they've got is they've got coal shed, they've got the dog kennels, and don't know where the dog kennels were. 5, number 4. Can't see where the dog, probably down here somewhere. Can't see it. And you can see how many buildings were actually built to support the construction, this underground construction. There's the dog kennels. I suppose that makes sense actually, to get the dog kennels away from where the prisoners were, so they don't get used to them. Every camp had kennels. In 1993, I was doing some research in the archive in Stutthof, and I had the files on the kennels. And so, and I said I was working. You put down what work you were doing, and I wrote down a dog's life in Nazi Germany. It's the subject of my thesis. Anyway, that was a little joke for future people, because they leave with the files. You write down what you're doing, and then come back to it. And sometimes, in my case, there could have been people not used the files ever, or indeed there were files which hadn't been touched for 40 years, or 30 years anyway, 60s, which is now 60 years ago, because it was 30 years ago since I did that, plus 31. Yeah, and that makes me feel old. Particularly when I think it was 20 years ago I was here last. Okay, right, so that actually finishes this tour. So I've taken you around. I think I've shown you almost everything that is here to be seen. I might have missed something out. Sorry, I know I've missed some. I missed the execution point out. for example. But I've also been able to throw other information in. Now, things I didn't discuss, which I wanted to talk about liberation. I wanted to talk about the whole idea behind Mittelwerk, more on the role of people such as Spare in this. But I thought I'd have plenty of time to do that when I was walking through the forest and things like that, but I didn't. So I'll do that in other videos. What was here? Don't know, but I'm going to presume it had something to do with water. I want to presume it was a well, but I don't know. I think when I was here, that was the only building that was actually here. Anyway, lovely large place for bicycles. That's very German. I've got my motorhome up there. I moved it up into the forest on the flat, because when I went back to eat, I wanted my and to recharge my phones. I wanted to sit there on the flat. Okay, thank you very much for being here. It's been a very long video, this one, and if you got this far with me, that's really good. I'm traveling through Germany now. It's now September. I've been on the road since April, and this trip has brought me to various places in Germany. Erringen, I was in Nuremberg, I was in Bayreuth, April, May. I started off in Heilbronn, where I sort of half live, and that was where my normal job is, my day job is. And then in Poland, I did videos from Luban, Jelenia Góra, Łódź or Chełmno nad Nerem, Warsaw. I was then in Treblinka, Ostrów Mazowiecka. Then where did I go from? Iława, Malbork, Sturm, Gdansk, Novogród, Szczecin, Lögnitz, Pasewalk, Sachsenhausen, and then I went to Düsseldorf. That's been my trips from Düsseldorf. I think there's no videos from Düsseldorf though. That's my. Sorry, there's not thousands. There's a couple of hundred videos from Düsseldorf, but that's my other occupation. So, thank you. Hey, look, we'll finish off looking directly into the sun, because that seems to me to be a good way to end something like this. So I upload every Tuesday and Friday at 2000 hours my time. So I live between Poland and Germany, and so more now in Poland than in Germany. And so if you're interested in this type of history, research-based history, although admittedly a lot of this was reading signs, then you might want to subscribe. But at the moment, thanks, all the best, and bye for now.